So guys, something horrible happened in Benue State on the 13th of June 2025, and this has to be among the worst killing sprees in Nigerian history. What you're about to hear will shock you to your core, and it is a story that exposes the deep wounds tearing through the hearts of Nigeria. On the night of June 13, 2025, when families in the Yelewata community of Benue State were settling down for what they thought would be a peaceful evening, death was already marching toward their doorsteps. At around 11 p.m., suspected Fulani herdsmen terrorists launched what can only be described as a coordinated and calculated massacre that will leave an entire community in ruins. The attackers came from two directions, a strategic move that showed this was no random act of violence. While one group stormed the police station to neutralize any resistance, the other group moved methodically from house to house, turning homes into cemeteries. They did not just kill, they targeted market stalls where internally displaced persons were taking shelter, and in a final act of cruelty, set the place on fire. The scenes that followed were too horrific to fully describe. Families of 15 people were burned to ashes in their homes. In one house alone, 40 people lost their lives, while 35 others died in another house. Men, their wives, and all their children, entire bloodlines, were wiped out in a single night. The attackers showed no mercy, not even to the younger ones who couldn't possibly pose any threat. What made this massacre even more tragic was that many of the victims were people who had already fled from previous attacks in neighboring areas. These internally displaced persons thought they had found safety in Yelewata, sleeping in market stalls near the police station for protection. But even there, terror followed them, and their supposed refuge became their final resting place. By the time the sun rose on Saturday, June 14th, over 200 people lay dead in what witnesses described as scenes from hell itself. The attackers had spent hours methodically executing their plan, not leaving until around 2 a.m. that Saturday. They destroyed everything in their path: homes, farmland, and over 200 bags of rice worth about 25 million naira. But Yelewata was not the only target that night. In a coordinated attack, another group of terrorists simultaneously invaded the Daudu community in the same local government area. However, they were strongly resisted over there, resulting in the death of 5 security personnel, including a captain. To understand the full horror of what happened in Benue State, we need to look at the long and bloody history of the Fulani herdsmen conflict that has turned Nigeria's middle belt into a graveyard. This is not just a recent problem, it is a crisis that has spanned decades, claiming thousands of lives and displacing entire communities. The conflict between Fulani herdsmen and farmers in Benue State has deep roots that go back generations. At its core, it is a deadly competition over land and water resources. The Fulani, who are predominantly nomadic herders, have traditionally moved their cattle across large territories following ancient grazing routes, some dating back to 1965. But as Nigeria's population exploded and farmland expanded, these grazing routes began crossing into lands used by settled farmers, creating a perfect storm for violence. Benue State, which proudly calls itself the food basket of the nation, has witnessed some of the most devastating attacks in this ongoing conflict. The numbers tell a story of unimaginable suffering. In February and March 2016, the infamous Agatu massacre claimed between 300 to 500 lives, turning entire villages into ghost towns. That same year in April, coordinated assaults left at least 46 people dead across Benue and neighboring Enugu State. The killings continued year after year like a never-ending nightmare. In June 2021, over 40 people were slaughtered at Odugbewo village during an attack on mourners at a funeral. In January 2014, 25 people, including soldiers, were killed in Agatu. April 2022 saw coordinated raids across Guma local government area that left 25 people dead. Just last month, in May 2025, attacks on multiple villages resulted in 42 deaths, while another earlier attack that same month claimed 56 lives. The statistics are staggering and heartbreaking. Between 2020 and 2024 alone, more than 2,300 people were killed nationwide in farmer-herder clashes, with Benue State consistently ranking among the worst hit states. Some reports estimate that between 2023 and 2025, nearly 6,900 people have been killed in Benue State due to violent attacks largely linked to this conflict. These are not just numbers, they represent fathers, mothers, children, and entire families whose dreams were cut short by senseless violence. When news of the June 13th massacre reached government officials, the responses revealed disturbing contradictions that raised more questions than answers. Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia initially downplayed the incident, claiming that only 59 people had died and describing the attacks as possible reprisals. His casual dismissal of over 200 deaths as mere reprisals shocked many Nigerians who expected stronger condemnation from their leader. However, the federal government painted a completely different picture. Secretary to the government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, contradicted the governor's account and officially confirmed that over 200 people had indeed been murdered in what he considered as a cruel and calculated massacre. Akume expressed horror at the scale of the attack and called it mindless barbarism that was totally unacceptable. The conflicting death tolls between the state and federal governments raised serious concerns about transparency and accountability. While families were still searching for the charred remains of their loved ones, their leaders couldn't even agree on how many people had died. This contradiction only added to the pain and frustration of survivors who felt abandoned by those sworn to protect them. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also responded to the massacre by directing the service chiefs to take swift action to restore peace. However, in his directive to the governor, he instructed him to lead the process of dialogue and reconciliation that will bring peace to the state. This particular statement has gotten a lot of Nigerians talking because if a dialogue or any reconciliatory meeting is taking place, it has to be between the state government and the Fulani terrorists, which suggests that they may have an idea about exactly who they should be talking to about the crisis. International organizations were not silent either. Amnesty International put the death toll at over 100 and described the incident as one of the deadliest in recent times. Even religious leaders spoke out with various voices calling for immediate action to end the cycle of violence. The massacre sparked immediate outrage across Nigeria, but nowhere was the anger more palpable than among the youth of Benue State. On Sunday, June 15th, just 2 days after the horrific attack, angry youths took to the streets in what they called the End Benue Genocide protest. They had had enough of watching their people being slaughtered while their government seemed powerless or unwilling to act. The protesters carried placards demanding justice for the victims and calling for an end to the senseless killings that had transformed their state into a battlefield. They marched through the streets with heavy hearts, representing not just themselves, but the voices of all those who had been silenced by violence. Their message was clear: enough was enough.
And when the primary aim of somebody is being defeated, that means the person is a failure. At this point in time, the Benue youth will have come out in our masses to say this administration has failed us. Our people cannot go back to their farms. Our people cannot go back to their ancestral homes. And these farms are the places where they farm, they labor to feed us, to train us in schools. And we are here today because our people cannot go back to labor for our younger ones. So where are we running to? We'll be running from our ancestral home to Makodi. Coming to Makodi, people have been running again from Agan to Yelwata to this place. And the Makodi itself is not safe. The other day it was not back here. Where are we running to? We continue running from these headers. And our leaders, our governor has remained close-mouthed. We are calling on them that if they cannot do it for us, they should quietly resign and tell us that this responsibility has become a burden to them and they can no longer tolerate, they can no longer condole it because their capacity has not reached to it. At this point in time, we are calling all the relevant security authorities to come on board to see how they can curtail this thing. I remain Comrade Ali Joshua David. Thank you.
I am protesting because right now we are standing on the dead bodies of our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters. We have become IDPs in our own very country. These killings have persisted for years. A lot of talks have gone on. Only last year, 500,182 people were displaced. We have 21 IDP camps in Benue. These killings won't stop. Up until this moment, nothing is being done. Why? What is more crazy is the deafening silence from our leaders, the duty bearers, the people who are supposed to speak, the people who are supposed to do something. They are silent. Now we want answers. We want to know what is going on. The government has a duty to protect life and properties. If President Tinubu is overwhelmed by this insecurity in North Central, in Benue, in Plateau, in Taraba, he should step aside. He should resign. They should stop playing politics with human lives. President Tinubu understands what democracy means. We need to stay alive. We want to just live. Right now, we are pleading for our lives. Look at what is happening. Look at the humanitarian situation in the state. Look at how it's affecting economy. Yesterday, I saw people being maltreated, women and children crying by the roadside because they've had to flee from their communities. A woman woke up in this community. Her children, 5 children and mother were lynched.
Yesterday, over 200 people were killed in their sleep. What kind of a thing is this? And Mr. President is quiet. The governor is quiet. These people are not asking for political alphabet. They are just killing people in their sleep. We are farmers. We are an agrarian state. What are we going to do with the people that are just roaming the streets? Please, we are calling on Mr. President to speak to us. No condolence message, nothing. Is Remu Tinubu a mother at all? She should talk to us. What is happening? He cannot depend on people that are trying to be politically correct. He reads the news, he sees the news, he watch Arise, he watch channels. Please, we are sending a strong message. We are going to stay here till Mr. President will speak to us. That is what we are going to say. Am I speaking the minds of Benue people? That is what we are doing.
However, the protest led to an unexpected controversy that exposed the deep political tensions surrounding the crisis. The Principal Special Assistant to the Governor on Youth and Media Mobilization, Honorable Atu Teva Joseph, took the shocking step of suspending 2 of his aides who had participated in the protest. His Chief of Staff, Mr. John Okeyima, and Chief Press Secretary, Mr. Lubem Tekula, found themselves suspended indefinitely for standing with their people in their moments of grief. In his suspension letter, Teva accused the 2 men of undermining the state government's position and working against explicit directives. He called their participation in the protest a serious breach of duty and trust. This action sparked even more outrage, as many questioned how standing with victims of genocide could be considered a betrayal of duty. It raised uncomfortable questions about where the government's loyalties truly lay. Is it with the people or with political calculations? The Benue Massacre of June 13, 2025 represents more than just another tragic incident in Nigeria's long history of violence. It is a stark reminder of how far we've fallen as a nation and how much further we might fall if urgent action is not taken. Over 200 innocent lives were snuffed out in the most brutal manner possible, yet the response from those in power has been marked by contradictions, downplaying, and political maneuvering. May the souls of all those who perished in this senseless massacre rest in peace, and may their deaths mark the beginning of genuine action to end the genocide in Benue State. Share your thoughts on this case in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories. Thank you for watching and stay safe.